The first crack of thunder rolled across the sky as Michael Bennett stood in his backyard, staring at the above-ground swimming pool that had been the center of his family's summer joy for 7 years. At 42, Michael had already decided this would be the pool's final season. Between the rising cost of chemicals, the endless maintenance, and his teenage kids now preferring friends' houses to backyard swims, it was time. The approaching storm merely confirmed his decision. Better to dismantle it now than deal with potential storm damage. What Michael couldn't have known as he began draining the pool was that his simple home improvement decision would spiral into a neighborhood conflict that would leave him standing bewildered in his own yard, facing uniformed police officers. "You sure about this, Mike?" his wife Elaine asked, peering through the sliding glass door as dark clouds gathered overhead. "We could wait until next weekend." Michael shook his head. "The forecast shows storms all week. Better to get ahead of it." He adjusted the drainage hose, directing water toward the side yard where it would flow harmlessly to the street. "Besides, I already told the guys from work they could have the frame if they help me take it down tomorrow." From the corner of his eye, Michael noticed movement at the fence line. Their neighbor, Diane Winters, watching with unusual intensity. In the 3 years since she moved into the adjacent property, Diane had established herself as the unofficial neighborhood monitor. Her complaints about noise, parking, and landscaping had become a regular feature of the community Facebook page. "Your neighbor is watching again," Elaine whispered, bringing out iced tea for Michael. "Let her watch," Michael replied with a shrug. "Nothing wrong with taking down your own pool." As the water level gradually lowered, Michael began disconnecting the pump and filter system. The wind picked up, rustling through the maple trees that separated their property from the Winters' immaculately maintained lawn. A few raindrops began to fall, and Michael quickened his pace. "Excuse me." A sharp voice cut through the pre-storm quiet. Diane stood at the edge of Michael's property, arms crossed tightly over her chest. At 50-something, with meticulously highlighted blonde hair and perpetually pursed lips, she had perfected the look of someone perpetually inconvenienced by others' existence. Michael straightened up, forcing a polite smile. "Afternoon, Diane. What exactly do you think you're doing?" she demanded, eyeing the draining pool with obvious disapproval. "Taking down our pool. It's time." Diane stepped closer, uninvited. "You can't just dump all that water. It's going to flood my garden beds." Michael gestured to the drainage path. "I directed it away from your property. It's going straight to the street drain. Those chemicals will kill my plants and my koi pond. Do you have any idea what pool chemicals can do to ornamental fish?" Her voice rose with each accusation. "The water's been untreated for weeks, Diane. It's essentially just water at this point." Thunder cracked directly overhead, and the rain began falling more steadily. Diane didn't budge. "I'm calling the HOA," she announced, pulling out her phone. "This is clearly against regulations." Michael sighed. "We don't have an HOA, Diane. This is a regular neighborhood." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "Then I'll call someone who will take this seriously." As she stormed back toward her house, Michael exchanged a look with Elaine, who had appeared at the door again. "Think she's actually going to call someone?" he asked. Elaine grimaced. "With Diane?" "Absolutely." Neither of them realized just how quickly their quiet Sunday afternoon was about to unravel. The rain had intensified to a steady downpour by the time Michael finished draining the pool. Soaked to the bone but satisfied with his progress, he gathered his tools and headed inside, leaving the empty pool structure standing like a massive blue bowl in his backyard. Through the kitchen window, he could see Diane pacing in her living room, phone pressed against her ear as she gesticulated wildly. "She's still at it," Elaine noted, handing Michael a towel. "Think she's calling the city water department? Environmental Protection Agency? The National Guard?" Michael chuckled despite himself. "Probably all three. I'm just going to shower and forget about it until tomorrow. The guys are coming at 9 to help dismantle everything." But forgetting about Diane Winters proved impossible. Just as the Bennetts were sitting down to dinner, the doorbell rang with an insistent, repeated pressing that suggested the visitor had no intention of leaving. "I'll get it," Michael sighed, setting down his napkin. Through the peephole, you could see Diane standing on his porch, protected from the rain by an enormous umbrella and accompanied by a balding man in a polo shirt who looked profoundly uncomfortable. Michael opened the door. "Diane, it's dinner time." "This is Greg Phillips from the County Water Authority," Diane announced without preamble, but the man beside her winced slightly at the introduction. "He's here to document your environmental violations." The man cleared his throat. "Actually, I'm Greg Phillips from the Parks and Recreation Department. I was leaving work when Mrs. Winters called the main office saying there was an urgent water issue." Michael stared at them both. "You called Parks and Rec about my pool?" "I called everyone," Diane said defiantly. "The water department didn't answer, and neither did code enforcement." Greg looked increasingly uneasy. "I'm not really authorized to." "Just come see." Diane interrupted, grabbing the man's arm and attempting to lead him around the side of the house. He's dumping thousands of gallons of contaminated water. Greg looked at Michael apologetically. Mind if I just take a quick look? Then I can be on my way. Michael gestured toward the backyard. Be my guest. The three of them trudged through the rain to the backyard, where the empty pool stood innocuously. Greg surveyed the scene, noted the drainage path, and nodded. Everything looks fine to me, ma'am. The water's been directed to the storm drain, which is the proper procedure. There's no violation here. Diane's face flushed. But the chemicals. He's poisoning the neighborhood water supply. Pool water is generally safe for drainage after the chlorine levels have dissipated, Greg explained patiently. Most municipalities actually recommend draining pools to storm drains rather than sewers. Check his permit then, Diane demanded, rainwater now dripping from her hair despite the umbrella. I bet he doesn't have a permit to demolish a structure this size. Greg shifted uncomfortably. In this county, above-ground pools don't require demolition permits if they're under a certain size. It's considered temporary recreational equipment. Michael couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at the look of outrage on Diane's face. Well, I hope you're prepared for the consequences, she snapped at Michael, ignoring Greg completely now. That water is already backing up into my yard. I'll be filing a claim for damages with my insurance company. They'll be contacting you. Michael glanced toward her immaculate yard, clearly visible through the fence and completely free of any flooding. There's no backup, Diane. Your yard is fine. You don't know what you're talking about, she insisted before turning to leave. Come on, Greg. I need to file a report. There's actually no report, Toe. Greg began, but Diane was already marching away. He gave Michael an apologetic shrug. Sorry about this. You're doing everything correctly as far as I can tell. After they left, Michael returned to his interrupted dinner, recounting the bizarre encounter to Elaine and their teenage children, who found the whole situation hilarious. Classic Karen move, their 15-year-old daughter Zoe commented, rolling her eyes. Next thing you know, she'll be demanding to speak to the manager of the neighborhood. Little did they know that by morning, Diane would escalate matters beyond anything they could have imagined. As Michael drifted off to sleep that night, the sound of rain hammering against the roof, he had no idea that his morning coffee would be interrupted by the flashing lights of police cruisers pulling into his driveway. Michael was barely through his first cup of coffee the next morning when the doorbell rang, followed immediately by a firm knock. The storm had passed overnight, leaving behind a brilliant blue sky that promised perfect weather for dismantling the pool. His coworkers were due to arrive in less than an hour. Who could that be at 8:15 in the morning? Elaine wondered, glancing out the front window. Her expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. Mike, it's the police. Michael set down his coffee mug with a thud. You've got to be kidding me. Standing on his porch were two uniformed officers, looking professional but slightly uncomfortable. Behind them, standing at the edge of the driveway with her arms crossed triumphantly, was Diane Winters. Michael opened the door, nodding politely to the officers. Good morning. What can I do for you? Mr. Bennett? I'm Officer Ramirez, and this is Officer Chen, the taller of the two said. We're responding to a complaint about destruction of property and illegal dumping of hazardous materials. Destruction of? I'm taking down my own pool, Michael replied, bewildered. Officer Chen consulted her notepad. We received a call reporting that you're demolishing a structure without permits and that the demolition is causing damage to adjacent properties through flooding and chemical contamination. Michael took a deep breath, reminding himself that the officers were just doing their job. Would you like to see the pool in question? That would be helpful, thank you. Officer Ramirez replied. As Michael led the officers around to his backyard, he was acutely aware of Diane following at a distance, her expression a mixture of vindication and anticipation. Elaine joined them, coffee mug still in hand, positioning herself supportively beside Michael. This is the pool, Michael explained, gesturing to the empty structure. I drained it yesterday following recommended procedures, directing the water to the storm drain. The water hasn't been chlorinated in weeks, and as you can see, there's no flooding of any neighboring properties. Officer Chen walked the perimeter of the yard, noting the clear drainage path and the distinct lack of any environmental hazard. Officer Ramirez examined the pool structure itself. And you're planning to dismantle this today? He asked. Yes, I have friends coming over to help. We're taking it down and they're taking the frame for reuse. No waste, no hazard. Diane could apparently contain herself no longer. She stepped forward, pointing accusingly at a perfectly dry patch of her yard. Look at the damage. My prize hydrangeas are ruined. The officers turned to where she was pointing. The plants in question looked perfectly healthy, their blue flowers nodding gently in the morning breeze. Ma'am, Officer Chen said carefully, I don't see any evidence of flooding or plant damage. It's underground damage. The chemicals have leached into the soil, Diane insisted. and he didn't pull a permit for this demolition. I checked with the county office first thing this morning. Officer Ramirez turned to Michael. Sir, do you have a permit for removing the pool? Above-ground pools don't require demolition permits in this county, Michael explained. It's considered temporary recreational equipment. The Parks and Recreation Department confirmed that yesterday when Mrs. Winters brought someone out to check. Parks and Rec doesn't have authority, Diane cut in. They don't handle code enforcement. Officer Chen stepped away to make a quick call, while Officer Ramirez continued questioning Michael about the pool's history and removal plans. Minutes later, Chen returned. I just spoke with the county inspector's office, she informed them. They confirmed that removal of residential above-ground pools under 5,000 gallons doesn't require a permit in this jurisdiction. Diane's face reddened. That can't be right. What about the water damage? Ma'am, we don't see any evidence of water damage to your property, Officer Ramirez stated firmly. This appears to be a civil matter at best, not a police matter. Then I want to file a formal complaint, Diane demanded. He's deliberately causing damage to my property. You're welcome to pursue civil action if you believe you have a case, Officer Chen replied evenly. But there's no criminal violation here and no emergency requiring police intervention. As the realization dawned that the police were not going to take her side, Diane's expression darkened. So you're just going to let him get away with this? Do you know who my husband is? He's a personal friend of Captain Rogers. Yet officers exchanged a glance that suggested this was not the first time they'd heard such a claim. We're simply applying the law as it stands, ma'am, Officer Ramirez replied. Now, unless there's an actual emergency, we need to get back to patrol. As the officers prepared to leave, Michael's coworkers began arriving, parking their trucks along the street. Diane watched in silent fury as they unloaded tools and made their way to the backyard, laughing and calling greetings to Michael. This isn't over, Bennett, she hissed as she stormed back toward her house. Not by a long shot. The officers departed with apologetic nods to Michael and Elaine. As they walked back to their patrol car, Michael overheard Officer Chen remark quietly, Third Karen called this week. What Michael didn't realize as he turned to greet his friends was that Diane's retreat was merely tactical. From her kitchen window, she was already making another call, one that would bring the conflict to an entirely new level. By mid-afternoon, Michael and his friends had made impressive progress. The pool's metal frame had been disassembled, the liner carefully folded, and the deck that had partially surrounded it dismantled into manageable sections. The backyard was transforming before their eyes, the empty space already sparking ideas for next summer's landscaping projects. Beers on me, guys, Michael announced as they took a break, passing around cold bottles from a cooler. I couldn't have done this without you. So what's the deal with your neighbor? Asked Tony, Michael's colleague from the accounting department, gesturing toward Diane's house with his bottle. She's been watching us through the blinds all day. Michael sighed. That's Diane. She's convinced I'm committing some kind of environmental crime by taking down my own pool. She called the cops on me this morning. His friends erupted in laughter and disbelief. No way. What did the cops say? Asked Steve, another coworker. They basically told her it was a civil matter and there was no crime being committed, Elaine answered, bringing out a tray of sandwiches. But she's been making calls all day. I've seen her pacing back and forth by her window, always on the phone. As if on cue, a large white SUV with County Health Department emblazoned on its side pulled up in front of the house. A woman in her 50s, wearing khakis and a polo shirt with the county logo, stepped out carrying a clipboard. You've got to be kidding me, Michael muttered, setting down his beer. She called the health department now. The inspector approached the group gathered in the yard. Good afternoon. I'm looking for Michael Bennett. Michael stepped forward. That's me. I'm Sandra Maxwell from the county health department. We received a report about improper disposal of pool chemicals and potential groundwater contamination at this address. Michael's friends exchanged amused glances as he once again explained the situation. The pool hasn't been chlorinated in weeks, Ms. Maxwell. I followed all the proper procedures for draining it. The Parks Department already cleared everything yesterday, and the police confirmed this morning that I'm not violating any regulations. Ms. Maxwell nodded, making notes on her clipboard. Mind if I take a look around? Standard procedure. Be my guest, Michael replied, gesturing toward the disassembled pool parts. As the inspector walked the property, Michael noticed movement at Diane's fence line. She had emerged from her house and was now standing at the property boundary, watching the proceedings with intense focus. Mrs. Winters, I presume. Ms. Maxwell called out, surprising everyone. Did you file this complaint? Diane straightened. Yes, I did. He's contaminating the groundwater with pool chemicals. My well water already tastes different. Ms. Maxwell frowned. Mrs. Winters, this is a municipal water area. There are no residential wells in this neighborhood. I meant my garden irrigation system, Diane backbilled quickly. It pulls from an underground reserve. That would still be connected to municipal water, Ms. Maxwell replied, her professional demeanor barely concealing her growing skepticism. Mrs. Winters, this is the third county department that's responded to your complaints today. My office received calls about this property from you to our main line, emergency line, and director's office. Diane's face flushed. Because no one is taking this seriously. He's destroying my property value by removing that pool. One of Michael's friends choked on his beer at this unexpected reversal. Ms. Maxwell made a final note on her clipboard. Mr. Bennett, everything appears to be in order here. You followed proper procedures for pool removal. She turned to Diane. Mrs. Winters, filing false reports with county departments constitutes misuse of emergency services. Consider this an official warning. As Ms. Maxwell walked back to her vehicle, Diane remained at the fence, her hands gripping the top rails so tightly her knuckles had turned white. This neighborhood has gone completely downhill, she announced to no one in particular. First the Garcias with their endless family gatherings and the Paddles with those spicy cooking smells, and now you destroying property values with your home improvements. My husband and I are considering legal action against all of you. An uncomfortable silence fell over the yard. Michael's friends exchanged uneasy glances at the thinly veiled racism in Diane's comments. I think it's time for you to go back inside, Diane, Michael said firmly. We're not breaking any laws or regulations, as 3 different official departments have now confirmed. We're just trying to enjoy our weekend. You'll be hearing from our lawyer, Diane snapped before turning and stalking back toward her house. Through her kitchen window, they could see her already dialing her phone again. Ma'am, you weren't kidding about her, Tony said as they returned to the dismantling work. That's next-level Karen behavior. The ultimate Karen move is yet to come, Steve predicted. I bet you $20 she shows up at the next town council meeting with a PowerPoint presentation about pool removal regulations. Everyone laughed, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this conflict was reaching a breaking point. As they worked through the afternoon, he noticed Diane's husband's luxury sedan pull into their driveway. Minutes later, both Diane and her husband were standing at the edge of their property, taking photos of Michael's yard with their phones. What do you think they're doing? Elaine asked, watching them with concern. Gathering evidence for whatever complaint they're filing next, Michael guessed. But honestly, I'm done worrying about it. We haven't done anything wrong. What Michael didn't realize was that the photos being taken weren't for a complaint to the authorities. They were for a much more public forum, one where the court of public opinion could be far more damaging than any official reprimand. And by morning, the conflict would explode beyond their quiet neighborhood in ways none of them could have anticipated. Michael's phone began buzzing with notifications before he even poured his morning coffee. Texts from neighbors, colleagues, and even distant acquaintances all contained variations of the same message. Have you seen the neighborhood Facebook page? What's going on? Elaine asked, noticing his furrowed brow as he scrolled through his phone. Apparently we're famous, Michael replied, opening the local community Facebook group. Diane's been busy. The post at the top of the page, shared just after midnight and already accumulating hundreds of comments, featured multiple photos of Michael's yard, the dismantled pool, and even images of Michael and his friends working. The accompanying text was a masterclass in selective outrage. Urgent nay more hode art, hazardous waste dumping and property damage on Maple Street. Despite multiple citations from authorities, the Bennetts continue their environmentally destructive pool demolition without permits or proper safety measures. Chemical runoff is affecting groundwater and property values are plummeting. The authorities refuse to act. Who will stand up for our neighborhood's safety? Citations? There were no citations, Elaine said incredulously, reading over his shoulder. This is complete fiction. Below the post, Diane had added additional comments detailing her version of events, claiming that multiple county officials had been paid off to ignore violations and implying that Michael's friends who helped with the pool were unlicensed day laborers rather than his professional colleagues. This is defamation, Michael muttered. She's actually accusing us of bribing government officials. As they stared at the growing comment thread, the doorbell rang. Outside stood Mark Chen, their next-door neighbor from the opposite side, along with 4 other families from the street. We saw the post, Mark said without preamble. We know it's nonsense. We're here to help. Michael blinked in surprise. Help. To finish clearing your yard, explained Gabriela Garcia from 3 doors down, and to set the record straight about the Winters. As it turned out, the Winters had been making life difficult for everyone on the street since they arrived. The Garcias had endured noise complaints for family gatherings that fell well within allowed hours. The Paddles had received anonymous reports to the HOA that didn't exist about their cooking odors. Even the Millers, an elderly couple at the end of the street, had been harassed about their grandchildren's chalk drawings on the sidewalk. We've all been dealing with them separately, Leah Miller explained. But this Facebook post crossed a line. She's trying to turn the whole town against you with outright lies. While the neighbors helped Michael clear the remaining pool equipment, Priya Patel, an attorney who lived across the street, drafted a response to Diane's post, methodically refuting each false claim with factual corrections. Other neighbors added comments sharing their own experiences with the Winters pattern of harassment. By noon, something unexpected happened. The tide of public opinion in the comments had completely turned. Rather than the neighborhood outrage Diane had hoped to spark, her post had unintentionally united the community against her. The final blow came when Officer Chen, who had responded to Diane's police call the previous day, added her own comment to the thread. As the responding officer to this address, I can confirm that no citations were issued, no violations were found, and the homeowner followed all proper procedures for pool removal. Filing false reports with police and other agencies is itself a violation of County Ordinance 15.3. By mid-afternoon, Diane's post had been removed either by her or by the group's moderators. The Winters house remained quiet, blinds drawn, cars in the driveway, but no sign of activity. "Do you think it's over?" Elaine asked as the impromptu neighborhood gathering in their newly pool-free backyard had evolved into an informal block party. Someone had brought a grill, another family had arrived with salads and sides, and children played tag across multiple connected backyards. Michael looked around at the neighbors who had come together, many meeting properly for the first time despite living near each other for years. "I think this particular battle might be over, but something tells me we haven't heard the last from Diane." He was right. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from a law firm representing the Winters, demanding compensation for alleged property damage and emotional distress. Michael passed it straight to Priya, who responded with a stern cease and desist letter outlining the potential consequences of pursuing false claims and defamation. No further legal notices arrived after that. A week later, a for sale sign appeared in the Winters' front yard. Within a month, they had moved out, reportedly to a gated community in the next county over. The following summer, where the pool had once stood, Michael built a patio with a fire pit and outdoor seating, the perfect gathering spot for the monthly neighborhood cookouts that had become a tradition following what the residents of Maple Street now simply referred to as the pool incident. "You know, in a weird way, we should thank Diane," Mark commented during one such gathering as children played and adults chatted comfortably across what had once been rigid property lines. "Without her, we might have never become actual neighbors instead of just people who live near each other." Michael laughed, raising his beer and mock toast. To Karen, then, the unlikely community builder. To Karen. The neighbors echoed, clinking bottles as the summer evening stretched pleasantly before them, the former battleground now transformed into the neighborhood's favorite gathering place. As for Diane and her husband, rumors occasionally reached Maple Street about their conflicts with the HOA in their new neighborhood. Apparently, they'd found their perfect match, a community with even stricter rules than they wanted to enforce, now being applied to them instead of by them. Poetic justice, Michael thought, had a satisfying way of coming full circle.